Happy Wednesday, Penn State fans. 10 days separate your Nittany Lions from the season opener of the 2025 campaign, 12th under James Franklin at Penn State when Nevada comes to Beaver Stadium on August 30th. That's Thomas Frankar. I'm Greg Pickle. This edition of BWI Live is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. At Academy Sports and Outdoors, they carry all the gear you need from the top brands, all at the prices you'll love. And now shopping at Academy is more convenient than ever. They offer free assembly on in-store purchases of most bikes and grills, plus free and easy curbside pickup on academy.com orders. So please check them out, Academy Sports and Outdoors, the sponsor of today's BWI Live. Thomas Frankar, T-Frank. It is a busy Wednesday because it was a busy Tuesday. We got a lot to get to. Some days, I'll give everyone a little look behind the curtain. Some days we sit here and start a show and say that, something to the effect of we have a jam-packed episode or a lot to get to. And that's not always true. We want you to think that, but it's not always true. On this particular day, it is very true.
Yeah. We create a lot of good things to talk about. It's not always that there's ambient good things to talk about because we have what we got to see from Penn State football yesterday. Just as a heads up, again, I don't know if today, can you hear me and see me okay? Like, is everything clean? Okay.
Yep.
Great. Because there were so many things to do and so many things to talk about, and because, we had so much video to process yesterday, I'm currently getting you the practice highlights on my computer right now. So once that's done, I'm going to start uploading that. And as we know, my wonderful Xfinity internet is excellent. And I'm just terrified that because I never process video while we're live because I don't want things to break. But here we are making the compromises we need for victory. And I know everyone really enjoys getting those highlights. So I'm getting those to you right now. So bear with me if we have any technical difficulties to start the show.
All right. Well, good morning and hello to everyone in the chat. Thanks for those of you who are always with us, those of you that are sometimes with us, and anyone out there listening live or on replay for the first time. As Steve Frank mentioned, there was a lot going on at the Beaver Stadium, or in and around Beaver Stadium yesterday, and we're going to start today's show there. Athletic Director Pat Kraft met with the reporters for the first time since February on Tuesday afternoon over at the newly renovated Greenberg indoor sports complex, which is beautiful, T. Frank. We got to walk through it to go to Pat Kraft's interview. Beautiful job by the construction folks there and the Penn State people who helped designed it. They did a great job, and that has a whole bunch of stuff in it from areas for athletes to sit and do work, to watch TV, nutrition, recovery, training, the whole 9 yards. So very nice complex there. Obviously, it should go without saying, but Pat Kraft was not asked to talk about the Greenberg sport because there's this sports complex, because there is this huge, enormous Beaver Stadium renovation project going on that it's a little bit more important and on the mind of many people, including Penn State fans watching the show. So what did we learn? It's safe, T. Frank. He was very clear about the West Side temporary seats being safe. I get where concern came from some corners of the internet and some parts of the fan base. But at the end of the day, T. Frank, my takeaway was always going to be this. Number one, in production, the company that put these temporary seats in certainly has done this before on a lot of different stages. Number two, Penn State and in production both have a lot to lose if something goes wrong here. And so they were going to make sure everything was safe. And then there's a lot of independent third-party people who were going to do the same. So not a surprise to bring that up today because I know it was something on the mind of many people. Capacity this year is the other thing. It's going to be 106,304 officially. I'm sure they'll have some attendance numbers higher than that. They always do, no matter what the official number is. But those were the two main takeaways.
Greg, I want to get into that first thing. 107,000. There aren't 107,000 seats in the stadium, right? That includes everybody in the building.
Correct.
So if there's if the capacity is 106,000, they've had 110 in the building before. And if the capacity is 107, these numbers mean a lot and nothing. And for fans, I get that it's a badge of pride. It's puts you up there, says we're with the big boys. Just like, Michigan and Ohio State. The actual number, it's always been a little bit flexible. I just think it's interesting that it does matter to Penn State as well, because it's not just those West Side bleachers. They're actually incorporating other stands. James Franklin's talked about this already. Other areas where there were just these vacant standing only positions, they've added some more of those temporary bleachers to maintain as much of the capacity as possible. So, as much as we're saying, like, logically, as we talk about it, these numbers, they're a bit fluid, but Penn State is absolutely committed to them. So Penn State, for fans that are worried, like, they're not going to sacrifice the size of the stadium and your favorite number for premium seating. They want both.
Right, and they will get it as this multi-year $700 million renovation project continues. Pat Kraft confirms that is on time. It is on budget, as you would expect him to. He said he believes
that was
the
another
project
big thing.
Yeah. Says he believes the project at this point is in the second quarter, which makes sense if you consider the first quarter, what they did back in January when they started things. Really, the major construction, there was work done prior to and during last season. But when they started things at Beaver Stadium with the press box filling in early January, and then he sees it now as being in quarter two as we reach the point where the 2025 season is about to start. Don't want to belabor the point too much here because I know practice is what most people probably came to hear about today. But I think the other thing worth noting with Beaver Stadium, T. Frank, is that construction is going to continue there. So during the season, it's not like they're just going to stop everything on a dime. Work will continue Sunday to Thursday during home game weeks. And I'm assuming he didn't say it, but the assumption would be that it'll be a 7 days a week process during away game weeks or bye week. So certainly a lot of work that will continue there for Penn State as they try and get this thing done on time, which of course would be before the 2027 season.
Yeah, and so the one last thing I want to talk about with Pat Kraft and with the facilities and all these things is that there was a lot of stuff that brought up NIL, rev sharing. It was all discussed. So if you want to go and get an update of what Pat Kraft thinks about all these things, we have his press conference here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, so you can go check out the full thing, all 27 minutes of our conversation with Kraft. But I just wanted to touch on the new dining facility quickly here, because I think it's really, really important. First off, when we're talking about a program-wide effort to be at the championship level, nutrition is unbelievably important to football players. It's not just about weightlifting, because you need to have the fuel to do things on the football field and to maintain. Humans are not naturally 250 pounds of rock-solid muscle. Like, we are not. That is an adaptation we have forced upon people with sports science. Like, this is a thing your body doesn't necessarily want to do. 330-pound people are rare naturally. 335-pound offensive linemen, you can make those, but you have to have the resources necessary. And in the past, Penn State's football players have had a dining commons that they quasi-share with the rest of Pollock, which is part of the west side of campus, right? Or I'm sorry, on the east side of campus, southeast, right? If you, it's not south, it's not north, it's not east. It's like right in the middle by where the football facility is. Now they have not just their own facility for football players and for athletes, but it is. I had a chance this offseason to tour an NFL facility. It's that level. It's that level of quality, from the aesthetics to the actual production of athletes. So they have put in a world-class facility to make sure that their athletes have every advantage to become the biggest, fastest, strongest possible. It's a very important thing that NFL teams and top college teams take seriously, and Penn State is now on the level playing field for the first time when it comes to the programs they're playing against with the particular sports complex, nutrition, and all those things.
Yeah, so again, beautiful new facility Penn State Athletics has there at the Greenberg Indoor Sports Complex. T. Frank, we're going to go off script here for just a second, but it's for a good reason, because Logan sent in a super chat before he has to leave for the morning, so I want to make sure we get to this before he has to bounce out and hopefully comes back and listens to the rest of the show. But send in a super chat, which you can always do. We appreciate the support of Logan and everyone listening and following along here. Don't forget, even if you're not super chatting, like the video, subscribe to the page. We appreciate it a lot. Logan asked, what are some things you guys are looking forward to learning during week one that may be a bit more under the radar as opposed to the receivers? Who's going to have the helmet communication dot for the defense? Things like that we've talked about kind of endlessly here. Do you have something in mind right away, T. Frank?
Zion Tracy. I just want to see how he plays in that position. And then the safety rotation in general. I think that's really interesting because this defense can be a classic defense that you've seen from Penn State playing a 4-2-5 with the exact lineup and alignments you might be expecting. It can be that. It can also be something totally different at different times. So there is more you're expecting from those three middle positions in the secondary. So who's playing where, what role, what skills are important in what roles, and who's won those battles, and then who are 2s and 3s that are going to be competing for playing time in the first 3 weeks of the season. So the secondary, the safeties, to me, that's a really interesting and important part of this defense. And then if I might get a bonus one in here, a couple things that I've been curious about when it comes to Knowles. How are they actually going to format the defense? Things fans aren't going to care about. But when it comes to like what I want to know about the defense, what I think is important, because then decides who plays where. Are they playing 3 tech and 1 tech up front? Are they specifying what defensive end plays on what side of the field, or are they interchangeable? We've seen Jim Knowles be very stringent about how he plays this in the past. Penn State has not been. They have been more fluid about who can play the 4 positions up front. And same thing in the secondary at corner. Who's playing where, left, right, boundary, field? How does all that stuff work out? Those are the details I want to know about this in week 1 that I think if you are a football junkie, that means a lot to you. And if you're not, then you don't care. And, of course, if you are a football junkie, I'll have it for you in our film room at bluewhiteillustrated.com after week 1.
Certainly looking forward to that, T. Frank. Yeah, I was going to go with the safeties here, so I will give you a different answer. I think from the position battle side of things, I don't know what qualifies it under the radar and what doesn't. I'm sure that, depending on which way you or how you follow the team or what your interest are with following the team, one may be seen as under the radar by you, not by me, etc. But running back 3-1 is a big one to me. I know it sounds like it should be irrelevant with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen back, but a big part of the process of keeping those guys fresh for what could be a 16-17 game season is giving them a blow early in the year, ending games where Penn State has what it feels like is a comfortable lead. However, the group behind Nick Singleton and Katron Allen has been up and down during training camp. And I think that ultimately it probably becomes Cam Wallace being the number 3 off the bench for when that time comes. There's clearly some other guys in the mix, Quentin Martin, Corey Smith, Tyke Hayes is a part of the 2025 class who's here. So I think that's just an important group. You want to keep those guys off their feet when you can. You got to be able to trust who you have in there to not fumble, especially if you're trying to run clock. So I think that's a big one. And then the other one to me is just punt returner. And I know that we've talked about that a good bit here, so that probably doesn't qualify as under the radar. But just fascinated to see you have Traber Pena, who had experience doing this at Syracuse. You had Devontae Ross, who obviously had much success doing it at Troy. And then you also have Zion Tracy, who did it for Penn State last year. And Tyzer Denmark had a few opportunities as well. So there's plenty of names there. There'll be plenty of chances, I'm sure, for Penn State to field punts over the first 3 weeks of the season. So I'm just kind of curious to start in week 1, how many guys they rotate back in there and what that looks like right out of the gate.
Can I follow up on your RB3 comment? I think it's a little concerning. I think it's fair to be concerned about the redshirt freshmen, specifically Quentin Martin and Corey Smith, have taken advantage of this opportunity. Cam Wallace coming back from a really tough injury. James Franklin talked about the fact that it was a slow go for him to start camp. And I also think just generally, those guys not being Big Ten size, fully mature yet, is a concern because we've seen guys blow up in the Penn State weight program. We've seen them put on 20 pounds in an off season. It's not unheard of. So I know what it is. I'm not trying to cast any aspersions on anybody for anything other than it's just I think it's a bit concerning that those guys haven't taken those obvious steps and we haven't heard the obvious, important news and good things to hear about the backup running back competition, because we said this could go 7 deep and it suddenly what Penn State's comfortable with, it's not 5 right now, and you would expect given the run up they've had that they would have those guys ready to go. There's been a lot of opportunity for it, and it feels like that development is not going at the speed we've seen other very talented players take. And that's just one of those, it doesn't need to be this year. Katron Allen, Nick Singleton are going to take all the steps that they're going to take. but the positive signs you may be looking for, it's not on the fast-paced trajectory you would like if you're a Penn State fan or probably a Penn State coach.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I thought the way Stan Drayton talked about this, T. Frank, 2 weeks or I guess 3 weeks ago now, and then James Franklin last week, I just was, a little bit concerning. I don't think there's any question about it. I don't feel like we've heard enough. It seems like there's just too many days like there were last year, T. Frank, kind of up and down, up and down. One guy has a good day, then he has a not so good day. The consistency has been an issue, and obviously that's not been the case for a number of years with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. And so, to your point, doesn't need to be that way for those guys this year, but it has to be that way for somebody, whether it's Wallace, whether it's Smith, whether it's Martin, whether it's somebody else. Time will tell. But certainly, I think that is one position battle that, on paper, looks to be so far down the depth chart as to almost feel irrelevant to some, but I think it could end up having more of an impact on things than maybe anticipated at this point in time.
Yeah, Christian in the chat says Tyke Hayes is going to be so good. He's been with the top team the last 2 times we've seen them. So they've broken into the first team, second team bubble, and then the second team, third team bubble. It's not 100% of like a strong delineation. It's just kind of a top tier and then the top group and then the second group. And admittedly, Corey Smith and Quentin weren't there last week, but Hayes, when they were back, guess who was with the top group again? So I think that this kind of just paints the general situation here with the running back 3 situation. But we're going to see how it plays out in the non-conference schedule because that's Penn State's going to use that to their advantage. They're going to get all these guys. They're going to stress test them, put them in the fire and see what happens. And you should be there to see it happen live. If you've been looking for a reliable source of Penn State football tickets, Jim at TixmanJim.com, formerly PSUTixman.com, has been running his ticket exchange in Wilmington, Delaware for over 25 years. That means since 2000. The internet was young, Greg. And he's been out there hustling, trying to get you Penn State football tickets. Every buyer's handled with courtesy, respect, and every ticket purchased is guaranteed, which is a big deal. I saw somebody on social media that, I guess went on eBay and got ripped off for a parking ticket or a parking spot, which is that sucks. Just poof, money being gone into the universe. Don't do that. Things are hard enough right now. Don't do that to your money. Don't do that to yourself. Go get tickets that are guaranteed. Proceeds used to fund the PSU AA Chapter Scholarship Fund and the Levi Lamb Fund for athletic scholarships. Pat Kraft mentioned how important scholarships are, especially for those non-revenue sports. Get your 2025 season tickets now. Go to TixmanJim.com or Jim at TixmanJim@gmail.com. Greg, tell us about Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Yeah, we got another super chat to get to after this, but first we got to thank some other people who help make this show possible. Academy Sports and Outdoors carries all the gear you need from the top brands, all at the prices you'll love. And now shopping at Academy is more convenient than ever. They offer a free assembly on in-store purchases of most bikes and grills, plus free and easy curbside pickup on academy.com orders. If you want to save even more every day, open and use an Academy Sports and Outdoors credit card to get 5% off future purchases when you're approved. Save time and money at Academy Sports and Outdoors, Academy Sports and Outdoors, and have fun out there. So thank them for sponsoring today's show. Yep. Thank you to PSU Tixman or Jim as well. I'm sorry, I got too many tabs open here. Tixman Jim, thank you. I got all 3 of his words right, just not in the right order. But PSU Tixman Jim, we thank you. Going to get one more super chat here, then we're getting into practice. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go
for it. No, I really wanted to hit the graphic, but that's all right.
Yes.
I always get excited when I get to hit my graphics, but go for it.
Yeah. What kind, Kristen PA, thank you for supporting the show with a super chat donation. He asked, what kind of mobility does Ethan Grunkemeyer have? Better than Clifford, less than McSorley, or is he less mobile than Clifford? T. Frank, thoughts?
Yeah. First off, shout out to Kristen PA, who is from my hometown, essentially. If you're 45 minutes away from my hometown, but you're still in Warren County, you're from my hometown. I'd say shout out 814, but it is literally half the state. It does not matter to say 814. So anyway, Chris asks this about Ethan Grunkemeyer. He is a good scrambler. I'm interested to see where the strength and development program have turned him into a runner, because he is not McSorley, and he's not a Bo Prabula player, but he had a higher baseline of movement skills than Drew Aller. So Drew Aller is built kind of wide, wide hips, kind of a more powerful runner, and he's worked on his athleticism to be more nimble. Grunkmeyer comes in more nimble, but maybe doesn't have the frame and the total mass of a guy like Drew Aller. But they work on these things. So I think quickness is going to be his skill, elusiveness. He's not going to be a guy that you're going to really rely on in the option game to be a dual threat quarterback. He's still in the mold of Aller. You're going to want him to be a passer, and he can offer you some plays in the run game that keep the defense honest. And it's just going to be a different way of getting there than Aller, who probably, because of his size, has a higher potential and threshold as a runner that we've seen. Yeah. I don't know that even the heights of what Aller has done is necessarily in the playbook for Grunkmeyer, but he could surprise me. Like, there could be more there on tap with his development in the weight room. We haven't seen any of those things from him yet, but very much not the true dual threat athlete kind of guy like a McSorley that you talked about.
Well, Chris, thank you for your question. And speaking of things we saw, T. Frank, let's dive into it. Let's get into our practice update after being out at practice on Tuesday night, the last time before game week with Nevada.
All right.
You gotta win, guys. You gotta win.
All right, Penn State, again, back on the practice field Tuesday night. Our last look at the team before Nevada week kicks off. This was our third chance to see Penn State in action. I believe it was either the longest or second longest chance we got to watch. I'm thinking it was second longest, but it was close to the chance we received back at Media Day on August 2nd, a few days after camp opened. And T. Frank, so we saw a little bit of live action. We saw a little bit of the traditional ball security, fundamental stuff, individual position drills that you all have heard us talk about endlessly. So what stood out to you just off the top?
So we got to see one-on-ones. We got to see, as everyone here in the chat and on the internet in the YouTube comment section has said, that's great, but we want to see wide receiver DB one-on-ones. And we didn't just get one-on-ones. We got 3-on-3s. So we got an actual passing play against a defensive back field playing against each other, which was both good and bad. We got to see more and evaluate more, but as I've said before, like to respect the house rules, which is individual players don't show concepts or schemes because that is an advantage for the other team. It's very hard to get one individual player when there's 6 of them out there, and you have to basically guess before the snap, where's the ball going? Because if I just get a guy who gets clogged up, it's not really as entertaining. And I hope, as I show you here, we got a little bit of both. Like, we were able to get this done. Spoiler alert, I thought the receivers looked pretty good. This is something that we've wondered, where the receiver is going to look. How are they going to play in these situations? Treber Pena, Kyron Hudson, you saw Kobe Howard all had good reps in one-on-one situation. It was worked on, as you can see here, understanding, picking, passing off, man coverage concepts in the red zone. And for what we saw and what we heard, I think the biggest takeaway was Penn State got a lot of good opportunities here for a lot of different players, and the receivers looked competent against some of the players. Although I don't know that I saw A.J. Harris out there. I don't know that I saw the starting corners, Greg. Now thinking about it, we saw some of the younger guys getting an opportunity, some of the twos, some of the safeties to go in this situation. But that was my biggest takeaway. And then the other one was there. People were wondering, hey, how's Devontae Ross? What's his health like? Well, when you dive to the ground for the ball and you lay out fully for it, you're probably good to go. Like, you're probably good to go for the first game of the season. So I think those were kind of the major takeaways. My initial salvo here of the receivers looked pretty good. And it was interesting to see those one-on-ones and to see the competition. Coaching staff got really fired up in those situations. What were your big takeaways from practice yesterday?
Yeah, they did, man. Coaching staff was, I'll tell you who has more energy and probably doesn't get talked about enough. And there's a fair reason for that because he's an assistant position coach. But Jordan Lucas, former Nittany Lion, he was a talker back during his playing days, and he has not lost that part of his fastball, that part of his game as an assistant cornerbacks coach back on the Penn State James Franklin staff. So I thought that was interesting point you made there about how fired up the coaches were, because he was certainly one of them. So you're right about these 3-on-3 situations are great to watch, but much like if you're watching on YouTube, the end of the clip there we showed was some defensive line work where it was 3-on-3 as well. And it's insightful, but again, especially from our perspective of trying to gather video and photo, if you guess wrong on where the ball's going or which direction it's going, you got nothing. So it can be a little bit of a lot going on.
There's a lot left on the cutting room floor from the highlight package today, for sure.
Yeah. So what stood out to me, this is not one of the things we have on the rundown, or at least I don't think we do, to get to in the in between the lines, where we hear from James Franklin and Andy Kotelnicki on this episode of BWI Live. But one of the things James Franklin had talked about is that they're down in terms of the number of minutes of practice they've had during camp by like 127 minutes. So roughly an hour and a half, or 2 hours, I guess, a little over 2 hours. And that math was not my strong suit. So bear with me there. And they're down in terms of, they have a lot more guys. He always points back to Olu Fashanu when he talks about getting guys
Veteran
less
rest.
reps who are established in camp. Penn State has more of those guys than ever, which leads us to some situations like yesterday where the number one receivers, who are not a proven commodity, obviously, are on the field. You have some younger defensive backs out there during those drills because the main guys, they're saving those reps for the 11-on-11 team periods, things like that. So, I thought the offense got the better of the defense more often than not. Jim Knowles has no issue informing somebody if he does not appreciate the way that they're playing or the mistakes that they're making. So that was very obvious. And it's funny because I think I remember it was one of the defensive linemen earlier this year, back in the spring. Somebody had asked them a question about Jim Knowles kind of being this quiet guy and very reserved. And, the player, whoever it was, I can't remember, but was kind of like, what are you talking about? Like he has plenty of voice. He has plenty of, does plenty of yelling. And if you ever see him in practice settings, he doesn't say a lot, but when he doesn't like something, or if he really likes something, he'll let you know loudly.
That was the first time those individual drills with the secondary was the first time we actually got to see that from Knowles, because I've had people come up to me who maybe have visited practice before, or we're at practice and there's somebody who's there that's like, is that seriously the defensive coordinator? Like he comes off as like this very demure older gentleman. Like, I'm trying not to say old man, because I think that's a little bit rude for a guy who, like, I think is like 60, but he just kind of like wanders around 60, and observes things and is there, but is very much a fly on the wall. But when the coaching happens, he's a full-throw defensive coordinator. This dude, like, we're talking Manny Diaz level volume, and maybe even more in terms of his vociferous criticism of the players. So for anyone that was worried, is this guy all there? He's 100% all there. He just uses it when he needs it and not all the time.
Right. And trust me, when it is that time, though, he will make sure that and everybody else knows what exactly it is that's on his mind. So, the one-on-ones were interesting, and we got to see some of the coaches more chattier side, I guess you could say, in action. We also got to see Chaz Coleman, the Penn State freshman, who was the talk of last week's post-practice media session. He did not come up with James Franklin yesterday, but he didn't need to, because we got to see him on the practice field and get our own eyes on him. And I mean, he just looks impressive. And you saw him working at the end of the video. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, end of the clip T. Frank played, he was working at the end of that against I'm not sure if it was a tight end or offensive lineman. I couldn't see the number.
No, it's tight ends. Yeah, he was working on tight ends. Yeah.
But so that clip shows you, and we'll get to it here as this video plays back again, but he has work to do. Like, I don't want anyone to think he's a finished product. I don't want anyone to think he's going to be an instant impact star. I think he's going to have issues when bigger offensive tackles get their hands on him and can impede him at the line of scrimmage, because I think the strength part of it, obviously, is usually the first thing any of these guys have to do if they're going to play in the trenches as a freshman. But you can see the smarts are there. You can see the athleticism is there, and there's going to be ways he can impact, I think, Penn State's defense in the 2025 season. There's a reason he came up previously when James Franklin was talking about the freshman who would likely greenlight to play this year. And certainly the more you watch practice, the more you see kind of where he is when they go through position drills. He's usually near the front. Obviously, we didn't see Zariah Fisher yesterday, so I think that's a notable thing when you're talking about where Chaz Coleman was in the rundown compared to where he would be if Fisher was out there. But still, he's having a great camp, and he certainly is a guy, T. Frank, who has continued the Coleman stuff up here, number 19, if you're watching on YouTube, is what I was talking about. But certainly a guy who continues to take the next step and will try and keep finding ways to get himself on the field as a true freshman, which at defensive end, as we all know, is very hard to do.
Yeah, I like the physicality and the intensity he plays with, but also the awareness. And to kind of compare the two, Yvonne Camacho here on screen, trying to get his gap, it looked like he just lost where he's supposed to be in the play in terms of what's the play and what am I trying to accomplish. Instead of like I'm engaging blocker, it's like I need to make sure I'm in this gap, or I make sure I know what the, understanding where's the scheme going, and so he kind of just washed himself out of the play. Chaz Coleman, at least on the play, he's on the backside of trying to into the inside. Athletic, active, physically strong, and isn't as physically developed as Camacho. Like he's not as, you don't see the definition in the models the way you're going to next year. You don't see the size on him, the refinement of all these things. This is all a raw product, but there is, even going back to his high school film, there is an innate sense of how to play defensive end in the way he plays. Things that he's raw, but he's getting to the thing he's supposed to do in an unorthodox way, and that's part of the advantage and a little bit part of the charm for him. But you're right, there are going to be times where he just gets big boyed by a 24-year-old offensive lineman or something like that. But he's able to play the run. That was the thing I took away. It was like, okay, so he's got his keys down, or he at least is good with where his keys are supposed to be. And, the details and all those things will come with time. The other part that I thought was interesting, and I was not on the side to see more of it, but James Franklin mentioned this after practice when he was asked Xavier Gilliam. He's fighting for a starting position on the team. And I think that's fair because Gilliam stands out every time he plays. And in a room full of athletic defensive tackles, we've got Zane Durant and Ty Blanding, who are great athletes. Gilliam is a good athlete on that, maybe not to the Durant size. I don't really want to rank them all. That's not the point, but he's athletic and he's strong. He plays through contact really well. He's physical. He's one of the biggest guys they have that has that combination of size and athleticism. So it's all of that, but also I haven't seen Alonzo Ford. So, we talk about Alonzo Ford being back. He's at practice, but I haven't seen him go to these individual drills, these team drills. So how much of it is he battling for his position? And is there a starting position that is it open? Is it not open? There maybe isn't as much clarity there. Like the top three, when is the top three fully together? I'm still going to hammer on this until I see Alonzo Ford play football. Maybe I'm wrong, but all the signs here are pointing towards, I think it's going to be end of September before we have a real gauge of that for Alonzo Ford. So, Gilliam good, Ford, I think is still working his way back.
Yeah, I think that when we talked about the question earlier in the show about underrated things trying to learn in week one, there's a reason I didn't say the defensive tackles because I just don't know. The question was from Logan. Thanks again for the super chat donation. I just don't know how you could put that rotation, that position group in the underrated category or under the radar category. To me, it's one of the bigger concerns Penn State and Penn State fans should have going into this 2025 season because we can sit here and say, and James Franklin has said it ad nauseum this offseason, all you want about what Alonzo Ford showed last year, and I don't disagree with that, but he still has to return to that level coming off of an injury, which, as we know, is never a guarantee, even though I personally think he will get there. It's never a guarantee, and that's especially true with a guy who has an injury history at the college level. So after that, you have a lot of guys like Gilliam, like Ty Blanding, like Owen Wafel, and there's some others in there that have shown some nice things during camp and that Penn State is excited about, but you still have to see it on the field. It's a lot of potential versus actual results. And until we see those results, and I don't want to be too alarmist here, but until we see those results, I do think it's something to be a little bit concerned about. So yeah, it is an interesting position group. I do think that, again, the potential is there. And if you want to give anyone the benefit of the doubt to get in the defensive line ready to go and guys who have not yet producing, Deion Barnes certainly deserves that benefit of the doubt. So we'll see how it all plays out. But without question, T. Frank, I think that's one spot we need to keep a close eye on, not just the rest of this week and next week before the Nevada game, but also throughout September.
Yeah, agreed. And I also think it's still going to be a good defensive line. So there's enough talent there. I know fans. This came up yesterday with the conversation with Pat Kraft, and he was asked about the non-conference schedule and all that stuff. And I just don't understand how fans could want to play Texas week 1. I don't.
Right.
Somebody's got to explain this to me. Of like, yeah, you need to have a hard non-conference schedule. If you want to go to an NFL model, cool. Yeah, absolutely. I want every game to be interesting. But if you want Penn State to win a national championship, it's like you're on board with, hey, championship or bust. It doesn't bleeping matter if you play Texas week 1. You need to have this defense ready to go, and you need all those young players to get as many reps as possible. An extra month of camp that we get to watch is awesome. Like, it's very informative for the team and for us. And so, like, the fact that they're going to play Nevada, FIU, and Villanova in the first 3 weeks, we're going to help Chaz Coleman. We're going to learn more about Owen Wafel. We're going to learn more about these guys. And guess what? Like, coming up in just a little bit, we're going to talk about Penn State learning more about these guys, too. That's absolutely what they're thinking about with these first 3 games.
There's no question about it. I just want to acknowledge, Larry, see your super chat. Thank you. We're going to get into that in between the lines, that whole wide receiver conversation. So I'm going to save your question for then. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, just wrapping up the practice portion of the show. Yeah, we're going to learn a lot. I mean, again, I hate to just sit here and constantly disparage Nevada, FIU, and Villanova, but I mean, it's as close as you're ever going to get to 3 preseason games at the college football level. It just is. Penn State at BetMGM is already almost a 7 touchdown favorite over Nevada. Lines aren't out yet for FIU and Villanova, but when they are, I would expect the lines to be in the ballpark of 50, if not more. I mean, that Villanova line won't come out until the week, like pretty much Friday night or Saturday morning, if they put a line on it at all with an FBS versus FCS contest. But yeah. So they're closest you're ever going to get to preseason games. And I think that it will be fascinating. And this was one question I wish I had got in for James Franklin last night and went a different direction and asked him about the status of his team's health. And he, felt good about it. But and I'm not sure if he would have given I don't want to say truthful, but insightful answer anyway. Because again, he doesn't want to disparage any of these teams either, especially if he would then go, somehow go on to lose to one of them. But right. The question I have, T. Frank, is how much different is this depth chart setting process this year compared to past years? You're not going to West Virginia. You don't have a Big Ten opener in the first 3 weeks of the season like they have previously. First 4 weeks, if you include the bye that follows the non-conference schedule. So I'm just curious how different it is this time around compared to years where, like, going to West Virginia, obviously last year, you had to know who your first and second teams were when you boarded that bus to go to Morgantown. You had to know who your season-long, or not maybe your season-long, but at least your first month travel roster was before you got on the whatever mode of transportation they took to Morgantown last year. This year, Penn State will not have to set a travel roster, T. Frank, until October. So it's just a totally different setup. And so I agree with you. I don't see the issue so I get it for fans' perspective, paying a lot of money to tailgate, a lot of money for parking, a lot of money for getting into Beaver Stadium. It's a whole weekend you build around it, and you prefer to see a better game. But if you want to see the best Penn State team, not just for Oregon, but for the rest of the year, this is kind of where you want them to be from this schedule perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's a lot of this is going to be deal with here between the lines. So let's get into that. Let's hear what James Franklin had to say about a competitions that we asked him about last night.
They have both gotten reps with runs.
All right, between the lines. I'm sorry, I was reading this comment from Melinda. She says, "Does the Big Ten require transparency and injury reports before games this year?" It's done it first conference to do so, and it will continue to do so. I believe that question probably hinges on the fact that the Big 12 recently said it's going to go to, I believe, a 3-day model. Yeah.
Okay. Because my wife, her family was all up talking about it last night, where Utah can't hide their injuries anymore, and I was like,
right.
Does that mean there's an injury report? Because of that, but I didn't think that was going to be anything that we've seen.
Yeah, so it's going to be a 3-day model with various designations that teams will have to pick from: out, questionable, doubtful, and out available, obviously, and then questionable, doubtful, and out, I believe, are the ones they have to choose from. The SEC, I think, has one more category, and the Big Ten is just out or questionable. So the Big Ten started that whole thing back in 22 or 23. Other conferences have, I think it was 23, and then the SEC in 24, and now the Big 12, and I think the ACC in 25, definitely the Big 12. So, yeah, the SEC and the Big 12 have multi-day injury reports. I think the SEC is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The Big 12 is going to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The Big 10, rather, is only Saturday. However, the key to remember here is that the Big 10 gave teams the option last year of not releasing one when they were not playing a non-Big 10 team. So it's very possible that Penn State will not release one until Oregon at the end of September. We'll have to wait and see on all of that. But I'm sorry. Yeah, we were going to between the lines, and I got stuck reading that comment and just figured I'd address it while we were doing that. But now let's get into between the lines. We're going to open things up here with something unrelated to the injury report, and that is the quarterback 2 battle. So Penn State has Ethan Grunkemeyer, who was thrusted into that role for the playoff last year once Bo Prabula left for Missouri, obviously, before the college football playoff. And Jackson Smolik, who's coming back from injury, was able to get cleared to do some warm-up stuff a little bit last year as the season progressed, but never returned to being fully available. So where's that battle at? Here's what James Franklin had to say Tuesday night.
Yeah, we're close to making a decision. We haven't sat down and talked to those guys yet. Probably a week ago we were close to, making a decision and then held off because we had a couple inconsistent practices. But we're close to making that decision again. And what was the second part of your question?
How you plan to divvy up reps between now and the opener, knowing there's only so many reps available in practice for the second teamer?
Yeah, so the guy that we feel like is in the lead right now, we've started to adjust those reps, but not to the point where the decision's been made.
So you hear James Franklin saying there that while that decision was not made as of the night of Tuesday, August 19th, would it shock me if that decision was pretty much, they could have walked in and made an announcement last night after they talked to us. I don't know if that happened. I'm just throwing that out there, but we've seen that happen in past years where, the meetings usually take place after practice, after James Franklin talks to us, which is right after practice. So this one is close.
That's all timed intentionally, absolutely timed intentionally, so that they don't have to announce it publicly, but also can then, make the decisions in house, and then we'll hear about it when we hear about it. If we ask about it next Monday during his press conference.
Right. So, yeah, it is game week. I keep forgetting about that. But again, Ethan Grunkemeyer, Jackson Smolik currently, in what appears to be the final stages of that battle. Although, to some extent, I'm sure it will progress into the fall because, again, if you believe what we just talked about with the way Penn State is likely going to be able to operate in its non-conference games, both of those guys should be getting plenty of reps regardless who goes first. And maybe one looks better than the other, depending on how things shake out. So we'll see. But Andy Kotelnicki, then Penn State offensive coordinator in his second season at Penn State, was asked about what he's looking for to pick a number 2 quarterback. Here's what he had to say.
You look for accuracy, you look for decision making, you look for their ability to execute the offense. I mean, the things that you would all assume and think, right? And both Ethan and Jackson have done a good job of that all fall camp. So, getting closer, you know what I mean? But certainly not in a position to be like, yeah, that's the guy right now, you know what I mean? So they've all developed, you know what I mean? They've all gotten better, which is, critical, that should happen. As a coach, really identifying what are their individual strengths and how, in which we've done this, is okay, hey, this guy does this better, this guy does that better. What can we call more of and less of for each of them? We'll do that, you know what I mean? Which is what we would do for our starting quarterback. So I've always thought play to the strengths of that position. It's not an offense. The players are the offense, right? So what do they do well? Let's make sure that we're doing those things.
Nate Bauer, I all have more thoughts on this quarterback 2 battle and where things kind of stand over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, where it's just $1 for the first week of access and get a full year of access to The Athletic as well. So join us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Again, $1 for your first week. That promo will get you to the middle of game week next week if you sign up today at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So, T. Frank, any just final thoughts on where this quarterback 2 thing is at? I mean, I would say at this point, look, I 100% agree with you. I think that's probably the main takeaway for me is that if this comes up next Monday, when James Franklin has his first game week news conference, they're going to have an answer for us. I don't think there's any question about that.
all we need is this reminds me of the Drew Aller Bo Prabula competition a couple years ago, where James Franklin refused to announce a starter. And it's a funny story that I made a sarcastic YouTube short saying, like, definitely James Franklin hasn't named a starter. Drew Aller's definitely not the starter. And it still comes up, and people think I'm talking about it this year because it's from 2023, and people don't look at the timestamp. It's the same thing. We have been at camp for 4 weeks now, and after the first week of camp, and they split into 2 different groups, Ethan Grunkmeyer has been with the top group. He has been Drew Aller's shadow. So Ethan Grunkmeyer's QB2. They just have to. And Franklin talked about, like, they were ready to make a decision, and then maybe there were some inconsistencies, and oh no, we fell back into a competition, and here we are where they still haven't announced it yet. They were never going to announce it, but it's been fairly clear this whole time that Ethan Grunkmeyer had the lead. So I would not be surprised next week if he's asked about that. It's Ethan Grunkmeyer. And again, not to say that Jackson Smolik was a bad quarterback at any point. I think we're going to see him in this non-conference schedule. I think he's going to play well, but yeah, Ethan Grunkmeyer's QB2 as far as I can tell. And I don't think it's all that hard to read between these lines. Even I can do it.
Yeah, no, you may feel that way about QB2, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I do feel it's a little bit hard to read between the lines with the next thing we're going to talk about, and that is the right side of the Penn State offensive line. And I'm not saying it's hard to read between the lines in terms of what it could possibly look like. I'm saying it's hard to read between the lines about what Penn State's actually going to do when it comes to its first drive on offense on the August 30th, 10 days from today against Nevada. So let me see if you all agree with that after you hear from James Franklin. He's going to talk about that, the right guard, right tackle competition. This is from Tuesday's practice, 11 days before Nevada on August 19th.
Donko, Cousins, and Shanahan. Yep. All 3 of those guys are in the heat of it. And to be honest with you, it's also how Rucci's playing, right? All those things kind of are factored in together. But I'd say it's similar to the quarterback. I think we got a pretty good idea if we were going to play this Saturday, but it's still close enough that we're gonna continue the competition. Different than quarterback, we're still probably rotating all those guys, equal reps. But it's a battle, and it really includes all 4 of them because how Rucci plays factors in, because we can move Donka to tackle, and then it's a 2-man race inside. So not ready to make that decision yet, but it's a really good battle. It's a really good problem to have. I think we can win with all of them.
So a couple things to unpack there. First of all, when talking about right guard, it's Anthony Donko, last year's co-starter at right tackle until he got hurt. It is Cooper Cousins, the freakish previous freshman who showed a lot of good things when he was on the field last year and is now a sophomore. And it's TJ Shanahan, a guy we have not talked about as much this offseason, but transferred in from Texas A&M during the offseason, got his feet wet during the spring at Penn State, and then obviously has done some nice things, enough to get mentioned by James Franklin indirectly. Well, directly from James, but the reporter that asked the question asked about Donko and Cousins at right guard, and Franklin felt compelled enough to say, hey, don't forget Shanahan. So I thought that was notable. And I guess the main takeaway there is, what is it like with Rucci at the right tackle spot? Because if he is either not doing as well as I hoped, or if Donko's doing better when he gets reps at right tackle, that would change the calculus inside. Otherwise, to me, it sounds like Rucci Donko is the most likely right tackle, right guard pairing at this point, but I don't think it's as cut and dry as that maybe sounds.
Yeah, I don't think anything's changed from my position earlier, but I think he added some context to how it's going to play out, or what the criteria is going to be for in season. Excuse me. So Nolan Rucci's your right tackle. Anthony Donko's your right guard, like you just talked about. I don't know what's going on. Oh, no.
You're struggling. Well, I'll carry you from here. So,
Hold on.
you have
I got
Donko.
it.
Yeah.
There was anytime I breathed in, it was like I was suffocating myself with phlegm. So, like, just an all-out, we were just joking in the chat how professional this broadcast has been. Anyway, Anthony Donko's your right tackle, or your right guard, and Nolan Rucci's your right tackle. Donko has another year to play football. right? Nolan Rucci doesn't. This is his final year at Penn State. So given the fact that they were close enough and he played well last year, I just have had this assumption that they're going to give him the opportunity to be the right tackle to show the NFL that he can do it and he can move on. If he can't, Anthony Donko can slip right into right tackle. He's been playing right guard during the spring primarily because he's getting reacclimated to that position. He played tackle last year, played it well. If they need him to, he can just go and kick out there. I'm sure there's a learning curve, and they've been getting him used to those reps, but it's not like it would be as hard of a fix for, move him out and then insert Cooper Cousins or TJ Shannon into right guard. But to start the season, the ideal situation, how it works out for everybody, is that Rucci proves he is the guy at right tackle. But that's not guaranteed, as James Franklin has alluded to. And it's what I talked about this offseason of, I understand that he played well. He still needed to get better. There were still areas where he needed to improve. I think missing the spring wasn't great. Ending the lifting in the winter without going in to camp. I think something happened to him in between, lifting and spring football that he had to just kind of rest and get over. He needs all that time. He was not a finished product last year as well as he played. Right. The offense was doing stuff to help him out. So if they have to do that this year, they're not. This is the whole point. A lot of these things are decided for week 1. They are not decided for the season. QB2 maybe is decided. The receivers, which we're going to get to here in a second, that's been decided for week 1. But by no means is this right tackle, right guard combo done for the year. And even in this, you're going to see Donko at right tackle because they absolutely want to get Cooper Cousins on the field, and that's how that works out.
Right. And so I think that the most interesting thing, I wrote about this over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com this morning, but the most interesting thing to me as it relates to the offensive line during the non-conference part of the schedule, T. Frank, is just simply how many combinations could Phil Trautwein come up with, and how many times does he give each of those combinations, or how many snaps rather does he give each of those combinations over the first 3 weeks of the season? I think that's the most interesting thing to follow with this offensive line, because I think you feel obviously very good about your Dawkins out to the left with Vanga and with Drew Shelton at guard and tackle, respectively. And not that you don't feel good about the right side. You just feel less good about the clarity of terms of who's going to be where, when, and why in that setup. So very fun to watch that this year. I don't think there's any question that we're going to see all kinds of possibilities and combinations during the first 3 weeks before they settle on the one they want to roll into Oregon with moving into that part of the season.
Also, you're going to see Cooper Cousins play a lot of I think you're going to see him play center a lot because they need to work on who's going to be the center of the future. I had thought maybe TJ Shanahan would be a part of that conversation. He played center at Texas A&M, but he's been playing guard. And whenever we see the centers working with the running backs and quarterbacks, it's Cooper Cousins. So that's going to be part of the non-conference schedule as well. Getting Cooper on the field is a priority, but him starting, he's going to play starting level reps. I just don't think he's going to have a starting spot in these particular games. So that's going to be part of the narrative here is if you're trying to chart who's playing where, keep your head on a swivel. It's going to be all kinds of a mess.
Yes. And so it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. All right. Last one we have to get to, and this goes back to the super chat we got a few minutes ago, and we just got another one. So we'll get to both of those after our last clip here, which comes from James Franklin. He was asked about the transfer receivers, kind of a rite of passage at these post-practice availabilities this preseason camp. And here's what he had to say, the latest thing he had to say about that group on Tuesday.
Pena was very productive. He's been probably better than I thought he was going to be, and I thought he was going to be pretty good. I've mentioned already that I do think he's a guy that got faster and stronger and more explosive in our strength and conditioning program. And then I think Ross, you guys saw in the spring, he's got the ability to be kind of the guy in space that I think scares some people just from a quickness. He's so efficient with his movements. So those three guys, I like where they're at. I would also make the argument with those three guys. I think it's going to be really important coming out of the first 3 games that we feel like we really know what we have with those three guys and how we can use them. So just like Andy knows our team better, we know those guys too, but we'll have a much better idea of who they are, who those guys are as well after the first 3 games.
So James Franklin talking obviously about the transfer receivers, Devontae Ross, Kyron Hudson, and Trevor Pena. Larry, I mentioned it earlier. Thanks for the super chat. He said, finally called a show. We know Pena, Hudson are wide receiver 2, but who is wide receiver 3? Ross isn't set in stone. Could Kobe Howard, a freshman, push for that? Both are talented. So again, I think James Franklin kind of answered your question there. We'll go a little bit more in depth on it, but like he said, they need to know what they have in these 3 guys from the first 3 games. And they know they have a pretty good feeling they have maybe more than they expected based on what they've seen in camp overall from a general perspective. You still got to see it on game day. And so I think to me, that's probably the biggest thought here is that, my personal opinion, it looks to me like Hudson is going to be I think Franklin called him Steady Eddie in that clip. To me, he seems like the guy that you go to when you need to move the sticks, you go to often, short, intermediate kind of stuff. So I think, but in terms of wide receiver 3 after Pena, if you think Pena and Hudson are top 2, it's probably Clifford. And so Liam Clifford is in that mix. Devontae Ross will be in that mix. There's plenty of guys who will be in that mix. So that's a long way of saying I don't think it's set yet. I think you're gonna have a better feel for it after the first couple weeks.
Yeah, so it's been pretty consistent who's the top group receivers. We talked about this with Ethan Grunkmeyer, and I never know how much to say here and how much is BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for our premium content, but everyone's there at practice. Open practice is all the media is there. You see the highlights on social media. You see the highlights here on the YouTube channel. It's the same guys. It's Devontae Ross, Kyron Hudson, Trevor Pena. Those 3 guys that go through all the drills first. Liam Clifford is part of that. He will be part of 4. And then it's Tyser Denmark, and it's Kobe Howard. Those are the guys that are in the top group consistently. And to Larry's question here, who plays the slot, Ross or Pena? Now, Trevor Pena was an elite slot receiver at Syracuse. I would imagine he's the slot receiver. I've had him pinned into that position because we saw Devontae Ross playing the Z position outside more often during the spring. But to Greg's point, to some of the people in the chat, they're going to move these guys all around. Those 2 are a little bit interchangeable. I think you're going to Devontae Ross line up in the slot, motion into the slot. It's going to be a little bit fluid, but you're saying, what's the depth chart? Where do they play most often? Kyron Hudson's the X. You're going to have Devontae Ross at the Z, and then Trevor Pena in the slot. But who are the backups to those players? Where are those guys playing? How does that next group of players, where do they mix and match? I think that is the beauty of this offense and the skill position. In the past, I didn't think they had enough guys that could play all 3 positions. Sean Clifford can't play any of them. Liam Clifford can play all 3. I think Kobe Howard can play all 3, and Tyser Denmark can play at least 2 of them. So we'll find out how that all shakes out. But to me, what we're talking about here is let's go into the non-conference. Here's the starting group, and then we'll find out what they do best to see if we need to move Devontae Ross into the slot or if Trevor Pena can handle playing outside. How do we use these guys best? That's the intel they want to build. So the starting point, I think, is clear, but where they end the non-conference season and how they feel about how that all goes, that truly is what they're doing with this. Somebody said, love to see exhibition game. That's what these are, right? I will be slightly disrespectful to talk about it in an honest term of what Penn State is trying to do with these games. I don't mean to be disrespectful to those programs, but that's what Penn State's opportunity is here for the first 3 weeks of the season in a situation like this. So the depth chart, the starters, I don't think that's kind of a mystery. It's how does the depth chart and how do the snap distributions play out among those 6 players?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that, T. Frank. I think that it will be, again, that's one thing I love about this non-conference schedule. I know, again, for the many reasons you just hit on and we hit on earlier, a lot of people don't. just going to get to learn a lot of things about different position groups, different players that you're not always afforded a chance to learn. More guys down the depth chart. I don't expect to learn a lot about Nick Singleton or Drew Aller in these first 3 games, but I do expect to learn a lot about guys further down the depth chart that in other years it'd be harder to learn about without question. I want to thank Al for the super chat. He liked T. Frank's rant about pounding the rock against Ohio State last year on Tuesday's BWI Live with Sean Fitz and Nate Bowers. You have to go check that out on our YouTube channel.
To be clear, dude, that was just about the running game. My rant was more about the running game in general, not necessarily against Ohio State. That was the context of the conversation that Nate painted, where we were talking about. It was about the trickeration within Andy Kotelnicki's offense, and I was there to cape up and defend for run game intrigue as opposed to pounding the rock, which is, I'll say it again, for the most part, boring. The point is explosive plays. Have fun with it. Do things that are daring and brave. A lot of times, here's the other thing. I was thinking about it since then. And Greg, I'm sorry. I know I cut you off and I'm on another rant. I also hate uber spread offenses. I don't like it when you throw 17 bubble screens a game because that's just a dive handoff to a wide receiver with even less interest. I don't like when coaches call game plans that feel scared. I want coaches to play with an attacking and to call with an attacking mindset of I don't have to get an explosive play on every play, but how am I hunting those? What are my intentions to do these things? And yes, you can run inside zone or duo for the bulk of your offense, but if you don't ever incorporate anything that tries to get an explosive play in the receiving game or the passing game, I also want to fall asleep watching 17,000 slants a game. I don't care if schematically it works. It's not fun to watch. You know it's fun to watch? A quarterback throwing into a tight window where you don't know what's going to happen. Is he going to throw an interception? Is it going to be caught? Is there going to be an acrobatic play? Is the running back going to break through and break a tackle? Is the quarterback going to suddenly sneak out the backside and you've got a 17-yard gain? Like, all of those things are exciting. What is not exciting is rote. And that's the part I was really railing against is let's not encourage play calling that's boring. That's all.
So John aptly says, you must have been a big fan of John Donovan. Is that true? I'm sorry. Yeah, this was John was actually giving you a compliment. I saw it there as Stephen Light said it. Yeah. Must have loved John Donovan. I don't know how much time we have, Stephen, to get into T. Frank's true thoughts on John Donovan, but I'm going to be willing to bet the answer is probably not.
I don't think he even had an offense that he could really install. I don't think we never knew what he wanted to be because they just had so many different problems within that offense.
Right. All right, T. Frank, it is an hour into this edition of BWI Live. You have any final thoughts before we get out of here on a Wednesday? We have plenty of football coverage coming over at BloydIllustrated.com, more wrestling stuff as well. So anything you want to get to here as we head out?
I want to apologize to one of our message board members who asked the best question of the week that we didn't get to twice in a row. Ready11 says if things
let's get to that. Then we'll close out. Yeah.
Okay, if things go right, national championship, undefeated, etc., what will be the underrated reason why, if things go wrong, they lose in the playoffs, lose 2 games, what non-injury related reason will be why? And I think that this is a really fun question of what are the factors that involve development and how a championship team is built. And so, here's the thing. Under reasons why, the overrated reason or the highly rated reason, the biggest reason is Drew Aller doesn't take the step as the franchise QB to make it right. But the underrated reason will be attrition of development. Guys don't get better on the roster. So your Chaz Coleman plays like a true freshman, and he's playing significant snaps. Tony Rojas, the safety position struggles with the nickel position to then mitigate what you want to do on that side of the ball. So those, I think, just as kind of a broad stroke of things don't develop right within the system to then maximize the potential of those players. So that would be, I'd say, the underrated reason why they succeed or fail is those things in the margins, the ifs, more of them to work out in Penn State's favor than do.
Right. I mean, I think that's the case every year. I think you look back, T. Frank, at some of last year's close wins that won at USC, the game against Minnesota. To make the college football playoff semifinals, a lot needs to go your way, and then even more so to make it to the finals. Health, execution at the right time, obviously development throughout the season, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, to me, those things that you just hit on really answer this question in terms of underrated reasons why things could go poorly or things could go very well for Penn State. You know, you start and end with injuries, but so much more of it is just a lot of these guys came back to take another step and to put that together with each other to win a national championship 1 year after finishing a game shy of getting the chance to play for that. And if those guys don't, that may not be something we're talking about a lot now because we're expecting them to do it. But if things don't go as planned, it could be something we spend a lot more time on later this year.
Yep, for sure.
Alrighty, everyone. That has been the August 20th edition of BWI Live. T. Frank is back on Thursday with Sean Fitz and Nate Bauer to give you the latest on Penn State recruiting. I'm sure they'll talk a little bit of football too. I have no doubts about that. But for Thomas Frank Carr, I'm Greg Pickle. It's been BWI Live. Thank you to our sponsors and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time.